Hello everyone, James Hilliard for Connection, and with me is Adrian Karen. He is a business development specialist with Apple. We're talking about Mac at work. I can recall back in the day, a couple Mac users, everyone else using PCs. What's the current state of the union?
Sure, so that used to be the typical state of the union.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, it's no longer the case. The Mac is a good citizen on the corporate network.
Okay.
So when we consider Mac at work, there's sort of a few different things that we keep in mind. Deployment, security, and intercompatibility.
All right.
So no longer is Apple relying upon its own protocols and its proprietary software. It can work well with Microsoft Office, Adobe Creative Cloud, the web.
Absolutely. That's kind of on the user end. What about a little more on the IT and the deployment, the management, how is that playing out?
Yeah, so using modern best practices to deploy Macs, it can be zero touch, so IT doesn't have to configure it. We can basically take a Mac, ship it out to your end user who's remote. They can turn it on. It can self-configure based upon IT settings and less support costs.
Let's talk about the support a little bit. I remember there was a pretty famous story. There was a major company out there. They had a bunch of Mac users, but they really wouldn't support them. If they called IT, it was like, we can't help you out. Part of that, though, there is a community. Mac users help each other out when certain issues arise.
Yeah, and there's also the ecosystem on top of that. So most Apple users nowadays, they've been familiar with iOS devices. They're familiar with their Mac. So when you consider that self-service ability for the Mac platform, there's less cost associated with that. There's less calls into IT, less help desk tickets. There's less software and things that you have to add on in terms of security, antivirus. It's lower cost.
And to that idea of lower cost, there had been a thought out there. Some folks were saying, I love Apple products. They look great. I get all that, but they are expensive. That seemed to have been a barrier to some Mac at work initiatives. How are things now?
Well, when you consider that full total cost of ownership in terms of the life cycle of the device, that serviceability, it's actually often less expensive. So when you consider technology and let's say a lease, most businesses are going to be leasing equipment.
Right.
So at the end of 2 or 3 years, they're going to be turning that in. Well, thankfully, with a Mac, there's a lot of value in that 2 or 3 year old piece of hardware, instead of most PCs where you actually have to pay to get it recycled.
Okay.
So you can actually get a discount up front when you're leasing it. On top of that self-service model, that's less cost for your IT staff.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes, IT actually has less staff that they have to pay.
All right, well folks, if you are considering Mac at work, we've given you some things to think about. We have more information for you as well, and we're going to invite you to visit connection.com/Apple.